Welcome, General. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
It's great to be here in Israel.
Looking at the conflict that is occurring right now in Europe, do you think there will be reverberations to your area of responsibility, CENTCOM?
So, as you know, CENTCOM adjoins U.S. European Command. We have Russians in Syria that we deconflict operations with there. We watch what they do very carefully, and we're always prepared for anything that might happen.
Do you think it will bolster the Russian position in the region?
I don't think anything the Russians are doing is going to bolster their position anywhere in the world.
What are you hearing from your regional allies vis-a-vis the American position on the Ukraine? Do you hear concerns?
I think nations here are very interested in what the United States' response is going to be. And part of my trip here over the last few days has been to talk to nations to assure them that in this region, our presence is going to continue. We're going to remain steadfast here in support of our friends and partners.
Well, they look at the kind of support that Ukraine is receiving as a non-NATO member, and probably they are concerned. What have you got to say to them?
Well, I think that the situation in Ukraine is very complex. As you know, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and there are limitations on what we're going to be able to do to help them. I think they've gotten a lot of help, a lot of diplomatic help, a lot of pressure has been put on Russia. But, you know, most of those questions are probably better referred to the Department of State than the Department of Defense.
Our Minister of Defense said yesterday that we might be within days from a new nuclear deal with Iran. How would that affect the Iranian position militarily in the region? I mean, your allies have suffered attacks that you have indicated that were sourced in Iran.
So it remains a very high priority for the United States that Iran not possess a nuclear weapon. The best way to get to that solution is through a diplomatic process. The diplomats are working, and questions for there probably, again, better for the Department of State. My part of that task, though, is to ensure that Iran is deterred from undertaking activities either against us or our friends and partners here in the region while the diplomats do their work to try to create a new deal.
Do you believe that Iran is pursuing nuclear weapons?
I'm not going to be able to comment on that. I would tell you, I'd go back to what the U.S. position is. The U.S. position is they should not have a nuclear weapon.
Mm-hmm. We've seen drone attacks mostly coming from Iran and Yemen. And there's been talk about a regional defense alignment to counter those attacks. What part does CENTCOM have in that?
So, great question. Let me begin by saying that Iran's use of its proxies, those who fight for them, whether it is in Syria or whether it's in Yemen or other places across the theater, is an act of shocking irresponsibility. Whether they are attacking Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, or United States bases in Iraq or in other places in the region, these attacks directly contribute to regional instability. Nations in the region recognize that, and they recognize the nature of the threat from Iran. It is primarily one of ballistic missiles, of land attack cruise missiles, and of unmanned aerial vehicles. There is great interest in pooling our thinking and our approach to gain an integrated air and missile defensive system across the theater.
And Iran post a nuclear deal with a rejuvenated economy, wouldn't it pose a greater threat to the region and allies?
Again, I come back to the United States position is we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, and we'll explore every opportunity open to us to prevent that from happening.
As CENTCOM commander, how do you feel about the fact that a prominent leader of a major ally like Saudi Arabia cannot enter the U.S.? What would you recommend your commander-in-chief?
I would tell you that's a problem for the Department of State, not the U.S. Central Command.
But clearly the Saudis aren't comfortable with that. How does it affect your relations with that?
So actually, that's a great question. My relationship is at the military to military level. So I interface with the Chief of Defense, and we talk frequently, and we'll continue to do so. As perturbations in the political sphere go up and down, my responsibility is to maintain that open link to the Saudi military, as I do with the militaries of every other nation in the region, including Israel, which was the reason for my visit here today.
So looking at the region, which is quite volatile in the last few years, what can you say to the people of Israel? Can they be comfortable that the region is going to stay stable in the foreseeable future?
So I can't say the region is going to stay stable. I'm convinced that Israel has the capability and the will to defend itself. I'm convinced that other nations in the region have that similar capability. And I'm also convinced that nations in the region can count on the United States as a good partner going forward in the future.
You know, exactly 20 years ago, your president had a State of the Union address in which he talked about the axis of evil. Who do you think is the axis of evil today?
I would defer that to the president and his representatives.
In your eyes?
So I would tell you this, in my theater, the actor who consistently displays the worst behavior and is the greatest threat to all of us is Iran. So that is who we worry about the most on a daily basis in this theater.
Russia, China?
They are all players in this theater. My primary focus is on Iran. Now, at the national level, the United States clearly balances against China as our number one priority. Russia is also a very high priority, and both of those are global threats by the weapons that they pose, by the design of their defense organization. Iran is a threat as well, but Iran is principally a regional threat, not a global threat. Not to say that Iran doesn't have some form of global reach, but Iran is more a regional than a global problem.
Thank you once again, General, for talking to us, and enjoy the rest of your short stay.
Thank you so much. It's been a great visit, and I look forward to the rest of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.